Please welcome to the stage, John Lovitt.
Well, that's quite an act to follow. I think each of the last three speakers have emphasized one of the most important things in the world, which is the importance of relationships and how they develop and how they impact the way we work together and what's value. So I'm very excited today to talk about what I think is one of the most important problems in the world, which is how do we develop people's ability to work together effectively? And I think there's stories that I'll hope to tell that will describe how the 3 C's can be an integral part of that, and the work we're already doing can provide a foundation. Hannah and Larissa were juniors at Wichita State University. Millennial urge to change the world, to make it a better place, was strong in both of them. They believed that the way to do that was to apply innovative technologies to create value, and that technical solutions that didn't actually get applied weren't really final value. But they also, in their studies, saw great opportunities for this. Hannah was studying biomedical engineering, saw lots of technical innovations, but didn't always see the path to implementation or the capability to implement. Larissa was a major in technical communications. So she worked with engineers and scientists and saw the deficiencies or the difficulties in communication and collaboration skills that were going to be necessary to get those innovations into impact. They knew as juniors that their classes weren't going to provide them with the capability they needed to do that. So with the support of Professor Gary Brooking, they decided to found a student innovation and entrepreneurship organization at Wichita State. It was a daunting task because one didn't exist, and the clear path to how to do that had a lot of unknowns. They knew they had to build a team, they knew they had to get student government approval, faculty sponsorship Gary provided, but many other unknowns were along the path, and they realized they were going to have the communication and capabilities that they didn't have yet, which were similar to the ones that would apply technology to do this task. So they set about this task looking at a combination of getting the job done and developing their capability as they went. The capabilities they needed to develop were getting and giving feedback, observation, listening, collaboration, and sometimes persuasion to convince people to do what needed to be done. Those very critical professional skills that are often referred to somewhat dismissively as the soft skills. They set about the task by finding help from everyone they could get. They were quite adept at it, but they also built a special relationship between the two of them. And that relationship was built around the fact that they worked together and had an opportunity to observe each other as they worked. And they would take those observations, share them with each other, decide what was working and what wasn't working and what they needed to do or could do to do better. So they observed, they shared, they analyzed, and they acted real time in context, and very rapidly could develop capability and move forward on their project. Project was quite successful. Within a year, they had the whole program up and running, widespread student participation, and in fact, they'd gone beyond that and developed the next generation of leaders. So in their team that they developed along with them, they applied these same methods to developing the team so that they could turn over the operation of the entrepreneurship club and proceed to other challenges. The other challenge they chose as University Innovation Fellows was to deliver pop-up classes on design thinking. They liked design thinking because it had a lot of the same concepts of collaboration with customers to understand what their problems were, what constituted value. As they did that, they performed a lot of those pop-up classes around campus at Wichita State at various venues, formal and informal, and began to get a reputation for doing something transformative with engineers that many had thought possible, which was turning engineers into people. They succeeded at that, and the people at Stanford at the UIF program asked Hannah and Larissa to come back to Stanford to the D School, where they help teach the next generation of UIF leaders how to make change on their campus. That got the attention of VentureWell, Keene, and the National Science Foundation, who invited them to conferences to present. It was a thing of beauty, the two of them working together on shared objectives, observing, sharing, analyzing, and acting real time. So very rapidly they went through this process. And as they did that, they built a foundation both of their own capabilities and of a process that would lead to lifelong capability to progressively develop in a self-developing mode. As I looked at my industry experience, I found some similar patterns, in particular where technology was being applied, innovative, transformative technology. One team in particular was working in upstate New York, remote from any management, a team of 4 who were primarily spending their time with their customers on the challenge of transforming software development approaches, which was critical for these companies. The team was solid, but not really spectacular, and it seemed they were stuck below the level of their potential. And they had a problem that was developing, which was Bob, one of the more senior people on the team, was becoming more and more chronically late on delivering on his tasks. And that was creating a problem for the whole team and for their customers. So when Dave, the manager, came to town and was spending some time with the team, they confronted him and said, "Hey, Dave, you got to do something about this problem. We can't trust Bob to get these done on time. It's becoming a problem for us. Get it fixed, please." And Dave asked a few questions about what was going on and then asked a question of them, which was, well, what did Bob say when you talked to him about this? There was a somewhat awkward silence, and they fessed up that, well, we haven't talked to Bob about it because we're not sure how, and we're afraid that he may take it wrong, and we don't know just how to do it. So Dave, rather than solving the problem for them, said, well, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to carefully observe what's going on, see if you can see the patterns and understand fully what the context is, which I don't have, but you do. And with that context, share with Dave what you saw and respectfully work together to see if you can find a solution. Then he said, as his own remote managers to do, say, "My, look at the time, I've got a plane to catch. Let me know how it goes, good luck," and headed out. Team had another beer, talked about what was going on, and prepared for the next team meeting. At the next team meeting, the same pattern played out of Bob taking on the most challenging tasks. But after about the 3rd task, Jim popped up and said, "Hey, Bob, is it possible for you to do all of those tasks you've done in the time you've got available? Seems like that's an awful lot." Bob was taken a little bit aback by that, but as he reflected on it, realized that he, in fact, was overcommitting and that was a problem for the team. But he was concerned and said, well, if I don't do that, how are we going to get that done? At that point, Mary, one of the more junior members of the team, said, one of those tasks you've got, Bob, is something I'm interested in, I've been studying, and if you would give me a hand if I get in trouble and need help, I could take that task on. So the process that the team went through of sharing an objective, looking at what the situation was, understanding a problem, and finding a solution without the interference or the meddling of a remote boss who didn't really understand the context, turned out to be brilliant. So what Dave did, rather than being an abdication of his responsibility, was actually brilliant in terms of putting the problem back in the hands of the team who actually had the context, the insight, and the perspective to solve it, and had a mechanism by observation, sharing, analysis, and acting to do that real time. The team took that as a model for working with each other and with their customers. That was picked up by the company and applied quite broadly across the world. And the teams that were remote from their management, interestingly enough, often did the best at this process. They took that self-development model more seriously. The company grew rapidly, customers got better results, but the most important result of that was the teams themselves. So to date, 34 people out of that organization and that group are CEOs or tech startup companies or running their own companies. Hundreds more are senior execs in the software industry. So this process turned out to be a highly developmental process for them and for the managers. It was interesting that some of the teams even commented that this process had turned their managers into muddling, meddling nuisances to valuable assets, maybe even more challenging than what Larissa and Hannah done with engineers into people. One of those managers turned out to be me, and their observation was that this process took me from giving them advice on how I would have done it back in the old days, which was out of context, not necessarily relevant, and not directly resulted to their results, into actually being part of the process of making observations with a different context that was valuable as they processed into a solution. So the good news is this process of team sharing objectives, observing, sharing, analyzing, and acting real time can be a very rapid process. The bad problem is that we aren't producing enough students that have those capabilities out of our engineering programs today. And that's a problem for employers. It's a problem for the capability to work together to apply technologies. And it's a problem for our students who are deprived of a lifelong foundation for learning and development. That's the bad news. The good news is we've got a great solution already well underway and in hand in the combination of experiential team projects, the keen entrepreneurial mindset, and when combined with this, they have a tremendous capability, tremendous power. So if you think back to Hannah and Larissa, what they did actually in terms of observations was curiosity. It was curiosity, though, not about the technical dimensions, but about the interpersonal dimensions. How's our team working together? What could we do better? What am I doing that would be better in terms of the people interactions? And how can we develop more? The connections of sharing those gave them a more complete perspective on what the problem was and what they might do about it, which they could do by analysis. And in the analysis, they could create value both by improving their project results and by developing each other's capability as they went along. A very powerful combination of capabilities of the 3 C's and empowering the participants in the projects to be each other's source of insight and feedback. This is this process of 2 or more people sharing an objective, working together toward that objective and observing the process and what can happen better, sharing those observations, analyzing that to find a solution is something that can be implemented in every team project without being a subject matter expert on teaming. It's something you can do, it's something your students can do, and it will begin to make progress on this problem of developing the capability to work together effectively. I've got a plane to catch. Good luck. Thank you.